Welcome to Behind the Debut, a podcast to shine a light on first-time authors and their journeys to publication. I'm your host, Michelle Reeves, a traditionally and self-published author myself, and in each episode we'll dive into the experiences of debut writers, how they got started, the challenges they faced, and what it really takes to bring a first book into the world. While most podcast airtime is reserved for best-selling authors, this is a space for new voices, authors who might not otherwise have the chance to share their story. In this episode, I'm delighted to welcome William Pollard, also known as WJR Pollard, the author of the Norse-inspired epic Chosen, which is the first book in his Chronicles of Orn. Hi, William. Thank you so much for joining me on the show.
Hello, thank you for having me.
So, can you start by introducing yourself? Tell us a bit about you, your background, and how you came to write your first book.
So, a bit about myself. I was born in Canberra, raised in Melbourne, where I lived most of my life. Did all the basic things as a kid, knocked around, got into trouble, went to school, and after leaving school, I pretty much spent most of my working life revolving around security type roles. My first real job was doing security with a security firm, and then from there I went and joined the army. I did that for 5 years, and with the exception of 3.5 years in construction, I went from there into working for the prisons, and I did that for just over 12 years. And roles like that, particularly when you're in a maximum security sort of environment, gets pretty hard on the body. So got to a point where sort of crossroads happened, and as I've always had a love for reading, especially high fantasy genre, and I've always sort of wanted to write something, I just decided, you know what, dive in head first, get it done. So I set to work writing and finally completed a book, which I was surprised because it was equally longer and shorter than I expected in terms of how long it took me and how long the actual book is. So it was quite an experience, and it's one of those things, like if you're running a marathon race, for example, you get to the end of the 42 kilometers and it's like, wow, I actually did it. So yeah, that's pretty much me in a nutshell.
Wow, that is a varied journey to writing for sure. When you actually before you started writing, did you plan out Chosen extensively, or did you kind of just dive straight in, what they call pantsing it?
Well, with planning versus just flying by the seat of your pants, it's kind of a bit of both. For example, if you're interested in world building, which I kind of am, I've figured the best place to start would be to have a map, build the world first, then fill it with regions and nations, and then from those nations you sort of figure out what sort of cultures they're going to have, differences, similarities, how will they clash, will they get along, friends to enemies or enemies to friends sort of thing on a geopolitical scale. And then sort of religions, are they going to have religions, are they going to be atheist, or all those sorts of things I would put into the planning part, and also deciding what what sort of face and characteristics the main people in the story are going to have, and how big a cast do you want? Do you want to keep it sort of narrow focus, or do you want a sort of more of an opera type scenario where you've got multiple characters that have varying significance to the overall plot and story? So I guess more of a planner, but when it comes to actually the flow of the dialogue and the events as they unfold, I sort of have a basic outline, but generally getting into the writing and interactions between the characters, I sort of find I make that up as I go along. And with the planning, I kind of often find myself, as I'm writing, scrapping that plan and then adjusting it, and then having to go through the whole plan, adjusting it as I go to accommodate the sudden change in tack. So I don't know, more of a planner, but it does leave room for pantsing it, I suppose you could say.
Wow, I find that really interesting that you created a map as part of your planning process. I've never really considered doing that, but I think maybe for the paranormal fantasy book series I'm going to be writing after my current series finishes, I might approach that. It's a really interesting way to start the world building, and also to think about the cast of characters and their cultures, etc. I'm really interested in that. Okay, what would you say was your biggest challenge that you faced during the writing process, and how did you overcome it?
Ooh, I'd have to say staying on track and staying motivated.
Hmm.
Like sometimes, you sort of, you're having a wrestling match with your own doubts and your own sort of procrastinations, and you get to a point where, what am I doing? Is it worth it? What's going to come of it? But you know, you just got to find your drive and push all that noise aside and put up your soundproof walls and just keep striving on. Probably the biggest obstacle, or I found the biggest hurdle, was getting to the halfway point. I sort of found that, like middle of the week, if you're a worker day Joe, Wednesday, hump day, the middle of the book is sort of the hump. I think once you get past that and you sort of look back over what you've done, it kind of makes you motivated to see where it goes, feel it out, and continue it. It's like you're at the halfway mark. You've come this far. You can't turn back now. You just want to keep pushing forward. Another obstacle, I think, would be the tendency to keep going back over it instead of pushing forward. Like, I constantly have the struggle of trying to stop myself from going back over it, rereading it, rewriting it, versus getting the whole thing done and then going over it with a fine-tooth comb to refine it before passing it off to an editor. In particular, as I'm writing the second part to the story, because book one's complete, I'm working on book two now. I find that I'm constantly going back and adjusting, and it's just slowing the whole process down instead of just driving forward. I mean, doing that, you sort of got the issue of when you finish the story, if you do go back over it and you find that you need to make a change, it could have a flow-on effect throughout the whole story. But, I mean, that being said, getting it done and then going back over it is far better than getting bogged down, worrying over, 5, 10, 15 chapters when you need to get the rest of it done.
Oh, we have such an ability to tinker with our stories, don't we? I think that whole sort of need to press forward and get the story actually down on paper or on screen before we go back to making changes is a tough one. A bit like you, I do like to go back and reread stuff, and I'm trying not to do that because it can really disrupt the flow. But at the same time, like you said, everything can take so much longer when you have to then on your second or third pass through the book, you need to rewrite whole sections. I guess it's a bit of a balancing act, isn't it? Um, were there any particular chapters or scenes or characters that you found especially difficult or even rewarding to write?
I'd have to say battle scenes. You've got different types of battles that can be had: open field battles, ambushes, sieges. But when you get to a point where you sort of, for example, if you've got a major war going on within the setting of the story, how do you prevent it from being stale? How do you sort of work out how to introduce new dynamics and different strategies? Who's going to win, who's going to lose, and how that looks and how that affects the overall story. But most of all, to stop it becoming formulaic and boring. So, like you don't want, well, I personally don't want a reader reading over a battle and just feeling like they've read it before further back in the story, I guess. So, because it does get to a point where if you've got a lot going on and it involves, a large scale sort of battle or war that's going on, it can become formulaic. Like you have this happens, this happens, this happens, this happens, and it becomes repetitive. And I've got a long way to go in this story. I planned it to be a 5-book series. So I guess that's the biggest challenge, and I've sort of faced that a little bit as I'm coming through the second book. And it's a bit of a fear, a sort of a worry that I have moving forward. But it's also interesting. It's it's going to be a challenge, so I'm looking forward to it. So a mixture of worry and anticipation.
It's interesting you say that because I actually downloaded a book onto my Kindle recently for how to write fight scenes because I have no clue how to write fight scenes. And I'm kind of okay with fight scenes in my Minecraft book because that's where fantasy characters, but human to human fights, I don't really know where to start in terms of describing them. So that's really interesting to hear you talking about kind of how you plan your battle scenes. Tell me a bit about how long it took you to write the first draft and how did you kind of keep going if it took you a long time?
The first draft, I'd have to say, took me about, oh man, I got lost in it. I'll say 3 months, because from start to finish, the whole process, I'd have to say, was about just over 5 months. But a lot of the delays was getting the edited work back, like sending the work off to the editor for a beta read, then getting that back, making the changes, then sending it back after going through it for a line edit, because I sort of had no idea about all this stuff. So that took a lot of time. So I'd say 3 months to actually get it to get the bulk of the work done, i.e. the first draft, and another 2 months on top of that going through the editing process. Staying motivated was just a case of setting goals. Like as I said, you kind of get to a point where you find yourself in a bit of a rut, bit of a slump, and you sort of, is it worth it? And sort of, you kind of have to be your own cheerleader. And, when you get those invasive thoughts, the angel and the devil on your shoulder, you got the devil whispering, what are you doing this for? What's the point? What are you going to get out of it? Why? What are you doing? There's so many other things you could be doing. Go watch some telly, watch a movie. And then you sort of have to put your hand over its mouth and say, no, I'm going to set this goal today. I'll get that done. And just push yourself to keep writing. Keep writing. Okay, I'm going to do 2,000 words today. And sort of working through it like that keeps you on track, I guess. You'll get some days where you just, there's nothing in you and you can't sort of push anything out. Those days are the days that I tend to say, all right, I'll let you go back and read 3 chapters and have a look at it. And then, but tomorrow, 2,000 words. So you kind of have to work at it like that. You have to work it yourself and push yourself to keep moving forward. I mean, everyone's an individual, so everyone has different tricks and strategies, I suppose. But that's basically how it is for me.
Oh, I love that you gave yourself that little treat of being able to go back and read some of the book to keep you motivated. Did feedback play any role in the manuscript? Did you have anyone give you feedback? And how did you approach the editing and the whole revision process with your editor?
As far as feedback's concerned, it didn't really have any role in shaping the manuscript because I just sort of worked at it on my own. I don't know, I'm a bit, when it comes to showing my manuscript, I'm a bit shy about it, I suppose you could say. So the first feedback I got was from the end result when I sent it to the editor I was working with for a beta read. And the purpose of the beta read was just mainly to get their sort of overall opinion of the characters, the complexities. Are they likable? Are they distinct and individual? Are they relatable? Events that unfold and occur to them throughout the story. Are they worthy of empathy? Do you sort of feel them? I suppose that kind of feedback was important. But generally the feedback I got, which surprised the hell out of me, I was expecting a lot more heavy criticism because it's a first time. It's like you're bound to make a mess of it, I suppose. But it was generally good. There was a lot of things that I sort of needed to go back, look at, and fix because when you got a manuscript that's 120,000 words, it's kind of, you're bound to have some plot holes and inconsistencies. So mostly feedback played a role in fixing those disconnects, those errors. The thing is, with the planning aspect, I forgot to mention timelines and travel is very important. So the internet is a wonderful resource because you can sort of you've got horseback, you've got walking, you've got distances, time it takes to travel distances, terrain, and all those sorts of things that allow you to move the story forward in a time frame that's believable and accurate, I suppose. So having done all that prior to and as I wrote the story, it kind of helped me a lot to avoid negative criticism and to allow the story to unfold in a kind of semi-realistic way, considering it's complete fiction and fantasy. You've got to have some basis in a way that a person reading it can gauge it, sort of allow their mind to have some basis in reality to grasp onto, so that they can, I guess, follow the story. So yeah, feedback's important. I'd have to say, it helps a lot, and it's also good motivation too. Motivation to, I wouldn't say perfect, but improve, and also gives you drive to keep going. Like if you get good feedback, obviously it makes you hungry for more. Like, okay, let's go, let's get this done. It's someone whose opinion you respect gives you props. You sort of think, well, that's your fuel, it keeps you going. With revisions, like first thing I do is reread the whole thing. Yeah, it's time consuming, and reading your own work, it's like you have to sort of push that out of your mind and approach it like you're reading someone else's work, and be hypercritical, and read through it like a hawk to spot mistakes, because you want to sort of ensure you've got a nice clean manuscript to present, because the less, you have to pay an editor, but the less work they have to do, the quicker you get it back, and the quicker you can get to work on polishing it, so you can sort of, being self-published, get it done, I guess.
Wow, 120,000 words in 3 months for your first draft. Can we just take a minute to acknowledge how fast that was? I think that's pretty impressive. I think it took me that long just to write 50,000 for my first book. And to be honest, it still takes me that amount of time. Really interesting to hear how you're saving time and I guess money as well in the editing process by really going through your draft with a fine-tooth comb before you even send it off to your editor. Though really, I think that's a really good tip for anyone who is working with an editor. A little question that I like asking: are there any surprising discoveries that you made about yourself or your writing during the journey to completing this book?
Surprising discovery about myself. Didn't realize I could be as emotional as I was. Some of the parts in the story, as I was writing them and then rereading them to edit it sort of, made me tear up a bit. Like, when you decide to bring a character to, I don't want to give anything away, but when a bit of tragedy pops up in the story, like even writing it, I sort of, hit me in the heart.
Oh, I love that, Will. We do get really emotionally attached to our characters, I think, don't we? And it can be hard when they, something happens to them that obviously we know it's going to happen. We're writing it, but yeah, it's tough when you you maybe have to do something. They say kill your darlings, don't they? They say, you need to put your characters in really difficult and challenging situations. But yeah, I totally get that. Let's talk about sales. How have you approached promoting your book? Do you enjoy marketing and sales?
I've never really been, I've tried sales, which I was never any good at it. I hate marketing and promoting, so I kind of I'm at a loss as to what to do with that, really. But I've set up I use Instagram, advertise through them, paid advertising on X, with the links leading to the web page, which allows the reader to find whichever mode suits them, whether they want to go to Amazon for the ebook or whichever else is selling it, Google Play, or whether they want to get it in paperback. Me, I prefer paperback. I don't like ebooks. Just looking at a screen. I mean, I spend enough screen time writing, so I like to have a physical book to hold. And even when I ordered my first sort of test print, I find that I'm able to spot mistakes easier reading a physical book. So I don't know. Yeah, I got sidetracked. Sorry. Promoting. Yeah. So that's pretty much that. I use that word of mouth. Friends, family, they spread the word. So I've made a few sales that way. But generally, I just sort of put it out into the world and see what happens, and sort of use the social media to push it. The sad thing is you get so many emails from all of these people. Oh, I'll promote your book. And it's you look at them and they've got like 10 followers. No, thank you. I'm not paying you. So, I mean, I kind of, you feel a little bit bad for them, but it's like, hey, I want to get it out there, and me paying you ridiculous amounts of money for 10 people to see it, it's not worth it. So yeah, it's kind of difficult, I guess. You got to be cautious who you're paying and how much they're charging you and what you're getting out of it. So you kind of want proof that they've got the chops to do a good job. So
It's really refreshing hearing you talk about, the whole sales process. And, I always describe it as being a really icky process. I don't really enjoy it, even though I worked in marketing for years. And I find marketing other people's products quite easy. I really don't enjoy marketing my own very much. And I guess it depends how you're approaching writing, whether you are a hobby writer or whether you want to make it your business. What stage you are at as a writer, and also I think the stage that you're at in the series that you're writing. I heard a really great piece of advice the other day, which is that if you have one book in the series, the next best thing you can do to market it is to write the next book, because readers like to know when they start a series that there's more books than just one in the series, because so many people, I guess, write the first in a series and then don't write any more. And that's kind of letting them down as readers. So I think what you're doing in writing the next book in series is probably a great first step in marketing the whole series. Tell us a bit about your writing routine. Do you have any favorite tools or resources that you can't do without?
one of my most important tools, as I said, you have to, like, building a world that's completely different from ours. You have to start with a map. I believe, a map with countries and cities and all of those sorts of things, depending on how big you want the scope of the setting of the story and how much of a particular world that your characters are living in do you want to expose in the story. So I found Asgar's fantasy map generator to be really good because it's got everything. It's got scale, it's got tools where you can, if you need a character to travel between cities, it's got this thing where you attach a point to a point and it'll give you a distance. And if it's following a road, you can click extra points and drag that line so it follows the road and adjust the distance accordingly. It also generates things and allows you to adjust them. It's got so much to it that enabled me to sort of, it randomly generates, puts different countries and cultures, and then from there you can sort of go through it. As far as I did, I went through it carefully. It allows you to sort of go through it and change it as you see fit. So I found that's essential. Other than that, I use Microsoft Word to type to write the story on. So obviously grammar check and spell check. Grammarly just annoys me, so I don't use that.
Oh, I'm going to have to check that tool out. I will put a link in the show notes for anyone else who is interested in taking a look at it as well, because it sounds fantastic for world building. If you could go back and give your pre-published self a piece of advice, what would it be?
To be honest, going back to my pre-published self, the only thing I'd say is, don't screw about. Get into it. Do it. Just get it done. Make sure you stay true to your characters, keep them consistent, and just do it. Get it done.
Oh, a big yes to that. I might just have to play that little bit back to myself every day as a bit of motivation. um, right. Will, tell us what's next for you as an author. Now I know you're working on the next book, so what can you tell us about that?
The next is Chronicles of Orn, Book 2, Beset. Chosen's Book 1, Beset's Book 2. I'm 2/3 of the way through, I'd say, maybe a bit more in terms of the first draft. So I'm hoping to have that done. I was hoping to have it done before my birthday, which is next month, but more likely it'll be closer to mid-year. But that's allowing for editing and all those other bits and bobs that need to be done. So yeah, getting through it, and then after that, straight on to book 3.
Oh, that's great. Really exciting news. So, Will, thanks so much for joining us today. And finally, where can people find you and Chosen?
On Instagram, it's at WJR Pollard. That's basically my Bookstagram account. And from there you can find threads, but I don't use that much. And I have a web page. It's basically wjrpollardwriter.com. That's WJRPOLLARD writer.com. And that'll allow you to find all of the links to purchase. So yeah, that's where you can find me. I prefer the website. So if you go there, that's probably the best.
Fantastic. I'll be sure to put those links in the show notes along with the books to read link so you can check out the first book in Will's series, which, as he said, is called Chosen. Again, thanks so much for being on the show today, Will, and good luck with your next project.
Yeah, thanks, Michelle. Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
That's it for this episode of Behind the Debut. A huge thank you to Will, WJR Pollard, for sharing his journey with us. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider subscribing, leaving a review, or sharing it with a fellow book lover. It really helps new authors get discovered. You can find out more about today's guest, including where to buy his book, in the show notes. And if you're a debut author yourself and would like to be featured, email me at michelle@michellereeveswrites.com for more details. Thanks for listening, and until next time, keep writing, keep dreaming, and keep turning the page on your own story.